The ultimatum, the Great Hall of the Stellar Confederation, stretched across nearly a kilometer of polished crystal and flowing energy streams. Representatives from 400 different species sat in tiered galleries that rose toward a domed ceiling painted with the history of galactic civilization. Today, however, the usual diplomatic chatter had fallen silent. Every eye was fixed on the central platform where Ambassador Sarah Chen stood alone. Her simple black uniform a stark contrast to the elaborate robes and ceremonial armor surrounding her. Sarah kept her expression neutral as she faced the assembly, though her heart pounded against her ribs. 20 years of diplomatic service had prepared her for many things, but not this. She had received the summons only 6 hours ago, pulled from a routine trade negotiation on Kepler Station with no explanation beyond emergency session, attendance mandatory. Above the assembly, Warlord Kithara of the Vulcan Empire rose from his throne-like seat. The ancient warrior stood nearly 3 meters tall, his scaled hide scarred from countless battles. Golden plates of ceremonial armor caught the light as he moved, and his 4 arms gestured with practiced authority. When he spoke, his voice carried across the hall without amplification, a deep rumble that seemed to vibrate through the crystal floors. For too long, Kithara began, the species known as humans have been allowed to expand unchecked through our galaxy. They take worlds without permission. They establish colonies in sectors claimed by their betters. They trade with enemies of the Confederation and call it freedom. His reptilian eyes fixed on Sarah with predatory intensity. This ends now. Sarah felt the weight of hundreds of alien gazes upon her. Some species showed curiosity, others contempt, and a few displayed what might have been sympathy. The Vulcans had ruled this region of space for over 10,000 years, building their empire through conquest and intimidation. They had never been successfully challenged, and their word carried the force of absolute law. The human government, Kithara continued, will surrender all military vessels to Vulcan custody within 72 standard hours. All human colonies beyond the Sol system will be evacuated and turned over to proper administration. The species will pay tribute equivalent to 40% of their total economic output annually. He paused, letting the terms sink in. Compliance is not negotiable. Resistance will result in complete extermination. The hall erupted in whispers and electronic translations. Sarah remained standing, her hands clasped behind her back in a pose she had practiced since her academy days. Inside, her mind raced through possible responses, diplomatic protocols, and the slim hope that this was some kind of elaborate bluff. Chancellor Vex of the Trade Federation, an insectoid creature with compound eyes that shifted like kaleidoscopes, leaned forward in his seat. The terms seem harsh, Warlord Kithara. Perhaps a more gradual integration would serve all parties better. Kithara's laugh was like grinding stone. The Vulcans do not negotiate with prey. The humans have had centuries to prove their worth to this galaxy. They have shown only weakness and scattered growth. They lack the strength to enforce their claims or the wisdom to submit to their superiors. From her position on the platform, Sarah could see the assembled representatives more clearly than they probably realized. The smaller species, those who had already submitted to Vulcan protection, nodded in agreement or remained carefully neutral. But she caught subtle signs of unease among some of the more independent civilizations. The crystalline Zorani delegation exchanged rapid light pulse communications. The aquatic Murtai ambassador's gills fluttered in what Sarah recognized as agitation. Ambassador Chen, Kithra's voice cut through her observations. You will carry our terms to your government. You have 72 hours to comply. We suggest you do not waste time with futile consultations or appeals to other powers. None will stand against the Vulcan Empire for the sake of humanity. Sarah stepped forward, her voice carrying clearly across the vast hall. Warlord Kithara, I acknowledge receipt of your terms. However, I must point out that humanity has never violated Confederation law or attacked any member species. Our expansion has followed all established protocols, and our trade relationships are conducted under legitimate commercial agreements. Your protests are noted and dismissed, Kithara replied. The Vulcans require no justification for our actions. We take what we require, and we eliminate threats before they can grow dangerous. His forearms spread wide. Perhaps if your species had developed proper strength instead of hiding behind words and treaties, this conversation would be different. The Murtai ambassador, her blue-scaled form rippling with bioluminescent patterns, spoke up from the water-filled section of the gallery. If I may, Warlord, the humans have shown remarkable innovation in several fields. Their terraforming techniques have been quite valuable to smaller colonies, and their medical research has benefited many species. Kithra's head swiveled toward the Murtai with predatory focus. Innovation without strength is merely cleverness before death. The humans build toys and call them achievements. They speak of peace while their merchants spread across our territories like a plague. He turned back to Sarah. 72 hours, human. Use them wisely. The session was declared ended, and representatives began filing out through various exit portals. Sarah remained on the platform for a moment, gathering her thoughts and watching the patterns of departure. Some species left quickly, eager to distance themselves from potential conflict. Others lingered, perhaps hoping to gauge reactions or form quick alliances as she finally moved toward the human delegation's exit. Chancellor Vex approached with his characteristic scuttling gait. His translator box crackled as he spoke in rapid clicks and whistles. Ambassador Chen, a word, if you please. Sarah paused, noting that several other representatives had slowed their departure to listen. Of course, Chancellor, the Trade Federation has always valued our relationship with humanity, Vex said carefully. However, we must consider the practical realities of the situation. The Vulcans have never made an idle threat. I understand your position, Chancellor, Sarah replied. Humanity has always respected the sovereignty of other species and the laws of the Confederation. We hope that respect might be reciprocated in our hour of need. Vex's compound eyes flickered rapidly, a sign of discomfort. Perhaps if humanity were to accept partial terms, show good faith, the Vulcans might be persuaded to negotiate. A token surrender, temporary concessions. Before Sarah could respond, another voice cut through the conversation. The Vulcans do not negotiate. It was Subcommander Drex, one of Kithra's lieutenants, his scarred hide marking him as a veteran of dozens of campaigns. They conquer or they destroy. These are the only choices they offer. The small group fell silent. Sarah met Drex's reptilian gaze steadily. Then I suppose we understand each other perfectly, as she walked back to the human section of the station. Sarah's mind was already racing ahead to the secure communications array in her quarters. Earth would need to know about this immediately. Though she suspected the intelligence services had already detected unusual Vulcan fleet movements. What concerned her more was the casual certainty in Kithora's voice. The Velkan warlord genuinely believed this would be a simple matter of overwhelming force against inadequate resistance. In her private chambers, Sarah activated the quantum entanglement communicator that linked directly to the Security Council on Earth. Director Marcus Webb's face appeared on the screen within seconds, his weathered features showing no surprise at the emergency contact. "Ambassador," Webb said without preamble, "we've been monitoring increased Velkan military activity for the past week. I assume this isn't a social call." "Director, I'm transmitting the full recording of today's assembly session. The Velkans have issued an ultimatum. 72 hours to surrender all human military assets and evacuate our colonies, or face complete extermination." Webb's expression didn't change, but Sarah caught a slight tightening around his eyes. "Understood. The recording is received and being analyzed. What's your assessment of their resolve?" "They're not bluffing," Sarah said without hesitation. Cathara spoke like a man ordering his breakfast. "To him, we're just another minor species to be absorbed or eliminated. He genuinely believes we lack the capability to resist." "Interesting," Webb murmured. "And the other Confederation members?" "Scared, mostly. A few seemed sympathetic, but none are willing to risk Velkan retaliation by supporting us. We're on our own." Webb nodded slowly. "Thank you for the report, Ambassador. Continue your duties as normal. Monitor reactions, gather intelligence, but don't take any actions that might be seen as provocative." "Director, with respect, what actions are we taking?" "The Velkans are talking about extermination. The entire human species. For the first time." Webb's expression shifted slightly, showing something that might have been a smile. "Ambassador, I need you to trust that Earth is not defenseless. Continue your work. We'll speak again soon." The connection ended, leaving Sarah staring at a blank screen. Webb's calm confidence was either reassuring or terrifying, and she wasn't sure which interpretation worried her more. Across the galaxy, in the deepest levels of Lunar Base, Director Webb stood before a wall of tactical displays showing the positions of every known Velkan fleet. Around him, dozens of technicians and analysts worked at stations humming with quantum processors and holographic interfaces. This was the command center for Project Titan, humanity's most classified defense initiative. Captain Elena Rodriguez, commander of the project's primary asset, approached with a data tablet in her hands. "Director, all Ghost protocols are active. The Velkans show no indication they're aware of our actual capabilities." Webb studied the displays, noting the massive Velkan fleet formations moving toward human space. 40 years of preparation, Captain. I'd say it's time to find out if our theories about asymmetric warfare hold up against real-world application. Sir, the Velkans have superior numbers, established supply lines, and combat experience stretching back millennia. Are we certain? We're not about to commit species suicide. Webb turned to face her, his expression grave but determined. Captain, what do you know about human history? Specifically, about small forces defeating much larger ones through superior tactics and technology. Rodriguez considered the question. Thermopylae Agincourt, Rorke's Drift. But sir, those were planet-side engagements with limited scope. This is interstellar warfare against an empire. True, Webb acknowledged, but the principle remains the same. David versus Goliath works when David has the right sling and knows exactly where to aim. He gestured toward the displays. The Velkans expect us to meet them with conventional fleets in traditional battle formations. They've never faced an enemy that fights from the shadows and strikes at the foundation rather than the structure. As if summoned by their conversation, alarms began sounding throughout the command center. Lieutenant Morrison at the communications station called out, "Sir, we're receiving reports from our outer monitoring posts. Multiple Vulcan fleets have begun moving toward human space. ETA to our nearest colonies. 18 hours. Webb nodded grimly. It begins. Activate Protocol 7. All Ghost assets to full operational status. It's time to show the galaxy what humanity learned while the rest of the universe was busy playing Empire. In the depths of space, far from any charted system, massive shapes began to stir. Ships that had never appeared on any registry, built in secret facilities that officially didn't exist, powered up their exotic engines for the first time. The Vulcans were coming to teach humanity about power. They were about to receive an education in return. The hour kennings of D1, hours and 47 minutes after the ultimatum was delivered, Warlord Cathara stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest. The massive dreadnought led a fleet of 300 warships, each one a testament to 10 millennia of Vulcan military engineering. Around him, his officers monitored displays showing the approach to Titan Colony, humanity's largest settlement outside the Sol system. "Range to target," Cathara demanded, his 4 arms crossed in satisfaction. 2 million kilometers and closing, my lord, replied Navigation Officer Zek. The human colony shows no signs of evacuation. Their defensive platforms are active, but minimal. Kithra's scarred lips pulled back in what might have been a smile. Excellent. We will demonstrate Vulcan power to the entire galaxy. Let them see what happens to species who refuse to submit. He activated the fleet-wide communications. All vessels, assume attack formation. Target the colony's power grid first. I want them to sit in darkness while they contemplate their foolishness. The Vulcan fleet spread into a perfect wedge, each ship taking its assigned position with the precision of countless drills. Cathara had personally overseen similar operations against 17 different species over his long career. The pattern was always the same: initial shock, desperate resistance, eventual surrender or extinction. The humans would prove no different. "My lord," Communications Officer Vrax spoke up, "we are receiving a transmission from the colony. Audio only. Put it through," Cathara commanded. "Let us hear there, please." The voice that came through the speakers was calm, almost casual. "Vulcan Fleet, this is Colony Administrator Lisa Park. You are entering human territorial space without authorization. Please state your intentions and submit to our traffic control protocols." The bridge fell silent. Several junior officers exchanged glances of disbelief. Kithra's expression darkened. Is this some form of jest? Do they mock us before anyone could answer? The human voice continued. "Vulcan Fleet, you have 90 seconds to comply with our traffic control requirements, or you will be escorted out of our space by security forces." Kithra's roar of rage echoed through the bridge. "Insolent prey. Target their communications array. Show them the price of disrespect." He activated his personal communication channel. "This is Warlord Cathara of the Vulcan Empire. You have refused our generous terms. Now you will learn the meaning of power." The response came without hesitation. "Warlord Cathara, this is Admiral Jackson Hayes, commanding the Terran Defense Force. Your ultimatum has been received and rejected. You have 10 seconds to reverse course before we demonstrate why that was a mistake." The bridge erupted in harsh laughter from the Vulcan officers. The idea that humans possessed anything resembling a real military force was absurd. Intelligence reports showed scattered patrol ships and outdated defensive platforms, a minor police force at best. Admiral Hayes, Cathara said with mock formality, I see no fleet. I detect no significant military assets. Do you plan to frighten us with harsh language? Look again, Hayes replied simply. The sensor displays across the Vulcan bridge suddenly lit up with new contacts. Ships were appearing throughout the system, not jumping in from hyperspace or uncloaking, but simply becoming visible where nothing had been detected moments before. Small at first, then larger contacts, then massive signatures that dwarfed even the Vulcan dreadnoughts. What is this? Cathara snarled. Report. Senior Tactical Officer Krell frantically worked his displays. My lord, I show 43 new contacts. No 67. The numbers keep climbing. How did they hide an entire fleet? On the main viewer, space itself seemed to ripple and shift. The first human ship to fully materialize was unlike anything in Vulcan combat doctrine. It was sleek where their vessels were massive, curved where theirs were angular. Strange energy patterns danced along its hull, and it moved with impossible smoothness for something its size. Stealth technology, breathed Science Officer Nex. But on this scale, the power requirements alone should be impossible. More ships appeared, each one unique in design, but sharing the same flowing, organic aesthetic. They took positions around the Vulcan fleet with practiced precision, creating a perfect, three-dimensional cage. Cathara realized with growing unease that his supposedly superior force was now surrounded. This is Admiral Hayes, aboard the TDF Prometheus, the human voice said calmly. Warlord Cathara, you came here to demonstrate power. Allow me to return the favor. One of the smaller human ships, barely a fifth the size of a Vulcan cruiser, fired. A single shot. The beam was unlike anything the Vulcans had encountered, not plasma or particle energy, but something that seemed to twist space itself. It struck the forward shields of the cruiser Blood Tide and simply passed through them as if they weren't there. The beam hit the ship's hull and the entire forward section ceased to exist. Not exploded or vaporized, but simply gone, leaving a perfectly smooth cut. The Vulcan bridge fell silent except for the hum of machinery and the rapid breathing of frightened officers. In his 3 centuries of military service, Cathara had never seen technology that could negate their shields entirely. Impossible, he whispered. Our intelligence reports were carefully crafted to show you exactly what we wanted you to see, Admiral Hayes interrupted. For 40 years, humanity has been preparing for this day. We studied your tactics, your technology, your psychology. We built our defenses specifically to counter your strengths. Dr. Yuki Tanaka's voice joined the transmission from her laboratory aboard the Prometheus. Warlord, your shields operate on traditional electromagnetic principles. Our quantum phase. Weapons exist in a state of quantum superposition until the moment of impact, allowing them to pass through conventional barriers. Would you like a more detailed explanation of the physics? Cathara found his voice again, though it came out as more of a snarl. Tricks and deceptions. We are the Vulcan Empire. We have conquered galaxies. You've conquered species that fought the same way you do, Admiral Hayes replied. Linear tactics, traditional weapons, predictable strategies. We're not playing by your rules. The human fleet began to demonstrate their point. Ships that had appeared solid suddenly became translucent, phasing in and out of normal space. Weapons fired from impossible angles, beams that curved around obstacles and struck targets that should have been protected. Fighters launched from the larger vessels moved like living things, their formations flowing and adapting with organic fluidity. My Lord Officer Krell reported with barely concealed panic. Our tactical computers cannot track their movement patterns. The ships are violating basic physics as we understand it. From her position in the colony's command center, Administrator Lisa Park watched the confrontation unfold on her displays. She had been briefed on Project Titan months ago, but seeing it in action was still breathtaking. Admiral Hayes, Colony Administration, all civilian shelters are secure. You have full authorization for defensive operations. Acknowledged, Administrator. Dr. Tanaka, initiate Phase 2. Across the human fleet, new weapon systems came online. The space around each Vulcan ship began to shimmer with quantum fields that disrupted their targeting systems and communications. Several Vulcan vessels fired wildly, their shots going wide or striking their own ships as their sensors fed them. False information. This is not warfare, Cathara growled. This is witchcraft. This is evolution, Admiral Hayes corrected. While you were busy conquering primitives with overwhelming force, we were learning to fight smarter. Every species you've defeated taught us something about your weaknesses. The demonstration continued with surgical precision. Human ships disabled Vulcan vessels without destroying them, cutting through their formations like shadows, striking with impossible accuracy and vanishing before return fire could be targeted. In 20 minutes, half the Vulcan fleet was dead in space, their crews unharmed but their ships powerless. Captain Alina Rodriguez's voice came through on a command. Channel from her position aboard the experimental vessel Ghost Walker. Admiral, the Vulcan command ship is attempting to retreat. Should we intercept? Negative, Captain. Let them go. But ensure they understand the message. The Prometheus moved alongside the Eternal Conquest, its quantum fields causing strange distortions in the space between the two vessels. Admiral Hayes's image appeared on Cathora's main viewer, showing a middle-aged human with graying hair and calm, intelligent eyes. Warlord Cathara Hayes said formally, your demonstration has been noted and answered. Return to your space and inform the Stellar Confederation that humanity is not as defenseless as they believed. Cathara struggled to find words, his warrior pride warring with the evidence before his eyes. This does not end here, human. The Empire will return with greater numbers, better strategies. You're welcome to try, Hayes replied with a slight smile. But I should mention that what you've seen today represents perhaps 10% of our actual defensive capabilities. We've been very conservative in our response, out of respect for your crew's lives. The Vulcan warlords for arms trembled with rage and humiliation. What do you want from us? Nothing, Hayes said simply. We never wanted anything from you except to be left alone. Go home, warlord. Tell your empire that humanity has grown up. As the surviving Vulcan ships began their retreat, news of the confrontation spread across the galaxy with impossible speed. Emergency sessions were called in every major government. Intelligence services scrambled to reassess their files on human capabilities. Species that had dismissed Earth as a minor power suddenly found themselves re-evaluating their entire strategic positions in the Stellar Confederation Assembly Hall. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood once again on the central platform. This time, however, the atmosphere was very different. The same representatives who had watched silently as the Vulcans issued their ultimatum now leaned forward with intense interest and, in many cases, barely concealed fear. Chancellor Vex of the Trade Federation spoke first, his compound eyes flickering. Rapidly, Ambassador Chen, the reports we have received seem extraordinary. Could you perhaps clarify the nature of humanity's defensive capabilities? Sarah smiled politely. Chancellor, Earth has always maintained adequate defenses for our territory and colonies. We've never hidden this fact. But the technology displayed against the Vulcans pressed the crystalline Zorani representative. Her words coming through a harmonic translator, it appears to violate several principles of known physics. Science advances, Sarah replied smoothly. Humanity has always invested heavily in research and development. We find that knowledge is often more valuable than raw force. From his throne, Warlord Cathara remained silent, his scarred features twisted. In humiliation, the return journey to Vulcan space had been the longest of his career, and the questions from his own high command had been merciless. How had a supposedly primitive species humiliated the galaxy's greatest military power? The Murtai ambassador, her bioluminescent patterns now showing excited curiosity rather than fear, addressed Sarah directly. Ambassador, would humanity be willing to share some of these advances with peaceful species? For mutual benefit, of course. Before Sarah could answer, the Vulcan subcommander Drex rose from his position in the gallery. The Confederation should be warned, he said, his voice carrying across the hall. The humans have been deceiving us all. They have been preparing for war while claiming to desire only peace. Sarah's expression remained calm, but her voice carried a new edge. Humanity prepared to defend itself because species like yours made it clear that we would never be safe otherwise. We never sought conflict, but we refused to remain victims. And now, asked Chancellor Vex quietly, what are humanity's intentions going forward? Sarah looked around the vast assembly, meeting the gazes of representatives from hundreds of different species. Many showed fear, others calculation, and a few displayed what might have been respect. Humanity's intentions remain what they have always been, she said clearly. We wish to explore, to trade, to learn, and to grow. We will share our knowledge with those who approach us in friendship. We will defend ourselves against those who approach us with threats. Her gaze lingered on the Vulcan section. And we will remember who stood with us when we needed allies, and who chose to stand aside. The assembly hall buzzed with rapid conversations in dozens of languages. The balance of galactic power had shifted in a single day, and every species present was trying to calculate their new position in the changed landscape. As the session adjourned, Sarah reflected on the strange path that had brought her to this moment. Humanity had never wanted to be a galactic power, had never sought to dominate or conquer. But sometimes, she thought, the galaxy forced choices upon you. And when faced with extinction or strength, humans had chosen to survive. The message was now clear to every species in known space. Earth's children had grown up, and they were not going quietly into any night the galaxy might offer. The Vulcans had come to demonstrate power, and in doing so, they had awakened something they were utterly unprepared to face. In the depths of space, the human fleet began its return to hidden bases and secret shipyards, but they left behind monitoring stations and sensor networks that would ensure no threat could approach human space undetected again. The age of humanity's innocence was over. The age of humanity's strength had begun.